Today's episode, Josh and I cover NBA All-Star Game editions, like the three-point contest and the dunk contest. And we also cover Anthony Edwards and the terrible Timberwolves. All that next. Today's episode of the Two Pointers podcast is sponsored by Crack Technician Services. This awesome up-and-coming tech repair company can be your go-to for any tech repair service. From screen repair to battery replacement to speakers and so much more, they can fix it all. It is run by my good friend, Mr. Jonathan Hardy. You can inquire about a service by sending a message on Instagram at cracked_technician_services or by way of email, crackedtechnicianservices@gmail.com. Again, that's cracked_technician services on Instagram and crackedtechnicianservices@gmail.com. Two Pointers podcast listeners get an exclusive discount code. You can use TPP at checkout for 10% off your first service. Now on to today's episode. Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh.
And welcome back to today's episode. We are going to cover like we mentioned at the top, the NBA All-Star Game editions. The NBA decided, of course, right after recording a Two Pointers podcast, they decided to add the three-point contest and the dunk contest. We're just going to run through a couple of things. I've got we've got a couple of things like our ideal three-point lineups and our ideal dunk contest lineups. We'll also cover the starters and debate a few snubs, even though the reserves come out as of recording this on Monday, February 22nd. The snubs come out tomorrow, or the reserves come out tomorrow, which means we'll not be able to cover the snubs in time. So first thing I wanted to start with, just off the top, we can do the starters first. I feel like would make the most sense. And then we'll go through the dunk contest and three-point contest. We both got some ideal lineups, hopefully, in store for the listeners here. Western Conference, I'll run through the starters real fast, and then Josh and I can debate. We'll start with the West. We got Luka Doncic at one of the two guard positions. You've got Steph Curry, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Kawhi Leonard. Any snubs, anything you'd like to debate? If not, I'll start.
Well, I feel like the obvious question to ask is whether Damian Lillard should have been starting in place of Luka Doncic. So I was looking into a little research on how the starter voting works, and I learned that it's actually not all the fan vote. The fan vote makes up 1/3 of who decides who the starter is. And then they have a coach's vote and a player vote. And Damian Lillard was named a starting guard in the coach's vote and the player vote ahead of Luka Doncic, but Luka Doncic was the starting guard in the fan vote. And then Lillard was the number 3 guard, just behind Doncic and Curry in the fan vote, but was behind in the coach and player vote. And they ended up giving the tiebreaker by fan vote to Doncic.
It's interesting because I think we all kind of we shouldn't be surprised that Doncic is the fan favorite. He's been a fan favorite since the moment he stepped on the NBA court. I knew we were probably going to agree on this, but I'm just going to make the case for Dame. I know it's early, and this is the earliest we've ever done the NBA All-Star voting. I did mention that last week, that we'll have 37% of the league's games played up until the point where the All-Star Game voting is concluded tomorrow into its entirety. But as of this moment, the Mavericks are still out of the playoff race, and the Blazers are 6th in the West. The Blazers are fighting with a lot of injuries, like Nurkic and a couple of the backup guards not playing particularly well. Dame's just keeping that team alive, point blank. He deserves it just for the sheer fact that he's going to be a guy we're going to look back on if he never wins a championship, and we're going to be like, cool, he should have made a few more All-Star games here and there. He should have been a starter here or there. He deserved it, right? He just flat out deserves it. I don't have anything, too deep on this one. He's flat out the better player this season to me. Luka's numbers, like we mentioned, it's crazy to think they've come down, and he's averaging 28, 8 and 8, but he's not helping his team. He's helping everything in every way possible to help his team win, but his team's not winning, right? He's doing everything he can with the roster we discussed last week. To me, Dame just flat out earned it. I've got another one for you, unless you've got a little bit more about Dame Dalla.
No, I liked everything outside of I think there's a big case for Lillard to start against Curry if we're doing just how good someone's played so far this year.
I got one for you that I think might make a news headline or two. I think arguably Paul George has been more important to the Clippers than Kawhi Leonard has. Leonard's missed a few more games. George, arguably, his numbers are about where you think they'd be, but just a couple of things before we can discuss that. George is arguably going to be the fall guy if the Clippers don't do anything this season. They'll ship him out of town the second they get a chance if they don't arguably either make the finals or win it this year in a very competitive Eastern and Western Conference landscape. But he's averaging 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5.5 assists. He's also shooting the ball from 3 lights out. I'll get to him in a moment in more detail, but he is shooting 47% from 3 this year, and he's playing stellar defense. He'll probably end up being all NBA first team defense. But regardless, he's playing like PG-13 again, and I think he's arguably been more important. He's played more games, like I said. His numbers aren't going to wow you like Kawhi's. Kawhi's are up a little bit in terms of overall efficiency, but it's because George shoots the ball more for that team. He's passing the ball more. He's playing better as an overall teammate. I like George over Kawhi just as like a odd ball out there.
I will throw a little bit of throw your pitch a little bit off. I do believe Paul George is considered a shooting guard by the voting standards. So I believe George was in the backcourt and not the front court vote with Kawhi. So it was a different vote altogether.
Well, shame on whoever decided on the vote because Kawhi is definitely, or Kawhi and Paul George are both definitely forwards. And they obviously, I know that team, it's tough. He's having to play probably guard more, I assume. Yeah, but
I mean, guard is tough. What he's played most of his career. We play a positionless game, if we're going to be honest here.
Right. They wiped the center position out a few years ago. Wipe the whole thing
basketball's out. Positionless. Ben Simmons is a point guard.
It doesn't make sense. Totally. It's so confusing. Regardless, I hate that we can't talk about snubs as a whole because I feel like we'd have a lot more debate and discuss. But to me, George I think he's just been, and like I said, some of my NBA opinion is eye test, but he's been so much more impactful for that team. I feel like, I mean, he's the reason they were even in the game on Sunday against the Nets that they eventually lost, but they were down a lot more. And he was the reason they came back and almost won that game. So as you must, Paul George is my, starter snub for the West. And obviously I think we agreed on Dame. What's up?
Steph Curry won the overall. No, never mind. I forgot. LeBron James is in the Western Conference still. He won the overall fan vote and will captain the team.
It was close. I don't remember how close exactly, but it was. Yeah. It did come down to the wire per se. Steph's deserved every bit of it. I'm glad he was one of the two in there. The Warriors are fighting as they're finishing right now a lot higher than I ever thought they would. And if the season weren't in today, we've talked about Steph before, especially when he had that 60-point game a few weeks ago. Long time ago now, it feels like, but I'm glad he was in there. Everybody else deserved it. Jokic has been playing amazing. LeBron's been playing LeBron. Yeah.
Jokic's first name on the board to me, but
absolutely. Yeah. Otherwise, Eastern Conference, you got Kyrie Irving at the first guard, Bradley Beal at the other guard position. You've got Kevin Durant, who is your voting leader. So it will be Team LeBron against Team Durant, which would be really fun to see this year. And you've got Giannis and, most deservingly, in my opinion, Joel Embiid. I don't have any major shakeups. I would possibly have Harden over Kyrie. What do you think?
I think it's tough because you're dealing with Kyrie, who missed a large portion of games, and then Harden, who, I mean, he didn't miss as many games as Kyrie, but he was out for COVID protocols, everything happening in Houston a good bit, and then getting traded, so he wasn't really part of the Eastern Conference for most of the time period. There's such a small sample size of both of them. I mean, I think it comes down to, it's popularity. The Nets are popular now. That's why Durant, Irving, Harden so high in the fan votes. Yeah, I mean,
my question would be if it's we know it's Beal and then insert other guard here, right?
Yeah,
I can't excuse Kyrie or Harden for what they did to miss multiple games. Kyrie disappearing, arguably, I think it's conspiracy theory. I think it could have been to help make sure Harden gets traded to the Nets, whatever. I saw some rabbit hole on Reddit about that. But also, and then Harden forcing his way out of I almost said Cleveland, forcing his way out of Houston. They, like you said, they both haven't played enough to possibly be, but they've also been either 1A and 1B best player on their team. Harden's been so much fun to watch. I would have Harden right now, like I said. But my question was originally, it's Bradley Beal, and then if it's not Kyrie or Harden, who is it? There's not really a fourth guard in the East, and I'm just like, oh my
I mean, I'm going to
gosh.
argue I think Chris Middleton's been great this year, but it's just
But he's not a guard, right?
Middleton.
Is he
So
considered?
she,
Is he
I don't
is he
remember what
really?
he's considered now. He might be a small forward.
Just depends on where they have Giannis, and they had Giannis technically in this at power forward. So
I think he's a forward. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know, man. But hey, great for Bradley Beal. I'm glad to see Bradley Beal finally, I mean, really reach that next level. I mean, being at what the fans consider the best guard in the Eastern Conference is amazing. And not a spot that I thought he would make the leap to this year. So good for Beal.
yeah. He's been really good, but he's never taken this next jump. I just wish this team was better. I know it's not a win, so don't get you into the All-Star game, but it should a little bit to be a really good player on your team. I think you should help your team win a lot more games. Granted, he can't control the injury, history on that team, but yeah, he's been really good. He's deservedly so. I think the most deserving on that list though, Joel Embiid. He's honestly just been. We saw another level of him the other night against who was it? I want to say it's the Cavs. He just took another step, man. I'd never seen that kind of step in him, and he looks like he can play 4 quarters in a playoff series deep into the playoffs. I think he's really motivated by what happened against Toronto a few years ago, and deservingly so. He's earned every bit of that All-Star starter.
Yeah, I feel like we've been waiting for the past 2 or 3 years what we could see in Philadelphia with a healthy Joel Embiid. And he's not even fully there yet. He's still in and out with back problems, but I think we're starting to see that healthy Joel Embiid. And I mean, a healthy Joel Embiid is the best, like, true center in the NBA, bar none, in a league where you don't have true centers.
Arguably the most dominant center since Shaq. I wouldn't disagree with
Well,
that statement I've seen. You got another one?
I think we tend to forget how good prime Dwight Howard was. Good
Yeah,
enough to
Superman, the
carry an
Superman
Orlando
comparison.
Magic
Yeah.
team to the NBA Finals on his own, really.
Yeah, that team was good. That team was loaded with shooters, but yeah, you're right. Dwight was pretty dominant.
I mean, it was Dwight and shooters.
Dwight and insert 3-point shooter here, right?
Yeah.
I'll use that as a really cool transition to the 3-point contest. I've got my ideal 8. There's not really anything to debate. It's going to be speculative until we find out who the heck it's going to be. But if I was as a fan, if I had this year's just perfect scenario, you know what? I want to hear yours first. So Go ahead with your 8. See how many I disagree on.
My 8: Steph Curry, CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard.
There's our first disagreement.
Buddy Hield.
There's our second disagreement. There's our third disagreement.
Paul George. Terry Rozier.
Nope, I have him too. I have him as well.
Zach LaVine. And Joe Harris.
Okay. I'm going to run through mine and then we'll review the differences. I've got Joe Harris, Malik Monk, Terry Rozier, Paul George, Joe Ingles, Gary Trent Jr., Steph Curry, and Seth Curry, not to be confused.
Okay, I'm okay with most of that. You put Malik Monk on a list of
Do you realize he's shooting 46% from 3 this year on a pretty good high amount of attempts?
Do you realize he hasn't played in more than 50% of the games this season?
Look, shooters, I know the stats probably a little inflated, but hey, have 2 Hornets in there. All right. They are okay. I was going to save the stat for later, but I'm going to tell you they're obviously first in their division right now at 14 and 15, 18 in the East, but they're shooting 38% from 3, which is 7th in the league. They're shooting really well from 3 as a team, and he's contributing to that. I would like to see Malik Monk because also I think he needs to be out in the spotlight more. I think he's gotten forgotten about a little bit. Yes, of course, he's missed a couple of games this year. But yeah, I think it'd be fun to see him in there. I don't disagree with any of the ones you had instead. Obviously, Dame, but I don't think Dame is a 3-point contest type shooter. I think he's a get hot and hit you from the logo type shooter.
I mean, Dame is he's currently 3rd in threes per game in the league.
Yeah, he's carrying that team, like we said. CJ, I would only disagree because of injury. He's not going to be back by the All-Star break, more than likely, fully healthy.
Okay.
He's got an ankle injury.
I mean, you don't have to be fully healthy to stand there and put up threes and shoot out. But
he's not, especially on this year, especially if they're going to try to make a run, if their team gets healthy at the end there like they should. He's not coming back, but I would love to see him in that. He's a great shooter. I think he's a game shooter and a contest shooter. I'm surprised. You said you didn't have Ingles, did you?
I did not.
Jingle and Joe, man. He's been arguably the best shooter on that Jazz team that's first in the West, and I think as of this moment, first in the NBA. I
So
mean,
Joe
Conley's
is
been good.
only averaging, he's making 2 threes a game. He's only attempting 5 a game. So he's really not, I mean, he's shooting a great percentage, but he's not shooting very often, especially for a
His
starter.
volume has come down for sure. It's because
Uh,
Conley's taking more of those shots. Like I said, and I think we agree on the Curry point, but I'd like to see both Currys. I think it's fun when they're both there. It's always fun to
that is
watch them
fun.
duel it out. They've done it
Yeah,
once. They've only done it once, correct?
I think so.
I think so too.
And I also
Gary
I
Trent
had to
Jr.
include, I don't know if you had it in there, I had to include Joe Harris because
I did
former
too. He was
champion.
my number
So
one.
yeah,
Yep.
gotta have the former
Also, former
champion.
champion shooting 50%. 50%. 50.
Yeah.
Former champion shooting 50%. Yeah, he deserves to be in there for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's the clear cut favorite right now. My
Yeah.
my dark horse surprisingly would be Paul George. I got Paul George as like this random. I think he
Yeah.
can get really hot. He's a game type shooter that could get there. You stand there and shoot threes quickly. I think he's one of those guys catch fire real quick. And we don't know. Like I said, it could be 4 guys this year. It could be 2. Could be 6. We don't know. I'm
It's
excited to
true.
see if any of the TPP nominations, if you want to call them that. I'm surprised to see if any of them show up on March 7th. You want me to
Well,
transition
Steph
to the
will be
dunk
there,
contest?
so
Steph will definitely be there. He'll already be there for the game.
yeah.
Just let him be in it.
And
Let
he's
him have some
the
fun.
best shooter in the league, so
He's been playing so great too. Gosh,
yeah.
that Warriors team they're surprisingly still in the hunt. I'll transition to the dunk contest now. I've got my ideal 4. I'd be shocked if these were identical to the listeners there. I've got at number 1, and I think the resounding favorite just based on how his play has been this year, and there should be no surprise as Josh realizes it very quickly who I'm talking about. Mr. Miles Bridges has been awesome. We obviously don't disagree on that. He's really good. He looks really good. I know he kind of dropped the ball last time in it, but he has a chance to redeem himself. He's taken that next step. He looks more athletic. I've also got Obi Toppin, who is just now coming back from an injury. Athletic dude doing 360 dunks in college games. Like, I know it's a college game, but he was doing them in dunks in transition. He looks really good. He's also got the freak athleticism. Zion Williamson, that comes as no surprise. We probably have him on both of our lists. We all want to see Zion in the All-Star game and in the dunk contest, or both. And then lastly, I've got a surprise because I think he's been really fun to watch. He's been really impactful for his team, barring COVID and injuries that they've had, and they've fallen out of lower in their division as well as in the East. I got Precious Achua, believe it or not. He is really athletic, really long, and I think could be one of those kind of Jason Richardson types that could just kind of surprise you and win 2 or 3 dunk contests in his career. He looks really good. And like I said, that wingspan, he probably, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he could pull back, over back behind his head from the 3-throw line. I just wouldn't be surprised. He's that type of guy. So any disagreements and any debates there?
No, I mean I don't really starkly disagree with anything. I think I mean, like, I don't think it'll happen like those 4. I mean, I'd like to see it, but
To be clear to the listeners, that's my dream for
yeah.
this year.
I mean, I'm gonna go through. I've got dream 4 if I'm designing the dunk contest I want, and then I'm gonna give you like my predicted like realistic 4 that I still think could be a good dunk contest.
And we can see if you're right later on.
Yeah. So dream 4, I'm thinking Zion Williamson, Miles Bridges, Ja Morant, and Aaron Gordon. That I
Yeah.
think would be just really an unstoppable dunk contest for. I mean, we've seen like how high. I just really would like to see what Zion can do. Ja Morant can fly up there too, and there was that teased. Are they going to compete against each other in the dunk contest thing when they got drafted that we all knew wasn't going anywhere, but we wish would. Miles can jump out of the building. He's been the best in-game dunker to watch all season, and it just makes sense in any scenario for him to be competing. And then Aaron Gordon, the best dunker to never win a dunk contest.
It's a shame. It
I'm
really
I'm
is.
still on board with that. He got robbed last year. He earned it. Like, got
I
more
agree.
50s in one dunk contest than anybody I've ever seen. And I think the judges just wanted to go home.
I'm going to
And
give
they
you just a what-off scenario in your opinion, and I'm just totally curious. I just is just like the NBA fandom in me. I just want to know your answer. Vince Carter, Nate Robinson, Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine. dunk contest, one dunk apiece, best dunk they can put out there. Who wins?
This prime, every one of them in their prime.
Prime across the board. That's always that scenario.
It's
Prime
VC all day.
That's what I
It's
thought
Vince
too.
Carter.
Dang it, I thought we'd have a different answer. Oh man,
Vince
yeah.
Carter.
He would make them look silly. He really would.
No, not even close.
Man, I just
I'd
thought
love
you'd
to
be
see
like,
you
yeah,
like go back and do
Zach.
like MJ with Vince Carter and Dr. J.
Dominique.
That would be
Dominique.
That would be a 4.
That would be fun.
But I still think, Vince Carter, greatest dunker in basketball history. And if you disagree, we can have a debate on that in a different day. But I think Vince Carter.
I don't think so. I really don't.
Yeah. Okay. So
just a few more points about the All-Star game.
Oh, I was going to give my realistic 4. I got the dream.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Realistic 4. I think Miles Bridges is going to be there. If he's like not in this dunk contest, I don't know what's going on. Then I think you're going to have Derek Jones Jr., 2-time winner.
Again?
Bring him back again, yeah. I think you'll have Pat Connaughton, who I thought was really good in last year's contest. I thought he was super entertaining, and he just didn't he just got kind of outshined by how good Aaron Gordon and Derek Jones Jr. were. Yeah, he didn't really have a fair shot. He did some cool stuff that people just didn't notice what he was doing. Like he had a dunk where he went up and he hit the ball off the backboard and then dunked it in one fell swoop.
I feel like he's the perfect example of we're a few years away from the dunk contest having some major change to make it more exciting. Because unless these guys start like doing 360 backflips off a trampoline, I just think the dunk contest is starting to hit this stall. But like then again, a few years ago we had Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon, so I don't really know where the dunk contest is going. It's kind of in that weird. I think it's in this like weird valley that like it just needs something to happen that's like Vince Carter-esque or Zach LaVine-esque again. I said that a few years before that Zach LaVine dunk contest, and then look what he did that year. But yeah, it gives guys like Pat Connaughton a chance. I think we see some major shape up. That's my prediction, is some random dunk contest prediction here. I think we see some major shape up in the next 5 years where they try to do something different to the dunk contest. Who's that fourth?
The fourth one is most likely someone I'm not going to predict because it's usually that spot that they pull somebody random, possibly from the G League, like when they first put Derek Jones Jr. in there and throw him in the dunk contest. So yeah, it's never going to be like your all-stars usually. If that was the case, we'd be having LeBron up against Zion in the dunk contest this year, and it would get better ratings than anything else, but the guys aren't going to do it. So yeah.
Not saying he'd ever win, but it is a shame we never saw like a LeBron in a dunk contest.
It's such a shame we never saw LeBron in a dunk contest.
Or like a D Wade or something. Just somebody, you know? It's a shame. It really is.
Or that year that LeBron said he was going to be in the dunk contest the next year and that he didn't do it.
Yeah, no, we all
knew
remember
that
was bait.
In 2010. Yeah. He told the fans that he was entering the next season. Yeah.
That was also had he already made the decision yet? Because the decision was probably a ploy at decision viewership, maybe. No, I wonder. I don't know if the dates line up there, but I wouldn't be my surprise his narrative push there. Just a few points on the All-Star game to kind of round us out here, and we can roll into the terrible Timberwolves. Just wanted to mention that they are bringing back the Elam ending. That I did not know that was the name of it until Elam. However, I did not know that was actually the technical term. I just thought it was called the Kobe ending. They never really clarified the true name of it, but
I think I told you that was the name of it in a podcast.
That was right. What I was saying is like that was when I found out what the name was. I didn't realize that was the technical term. I really loved it. I think it's going to be really fun again this year. If barring, I think a couple guys probably give up or sit out, or have an injury in quotation marks. Holding up my fingers there. Yeah, they are bringing that back. They're going to do the dunk contest. I don't know if you mentioned this at halftime. The 3-point contest and the skills comp is at 6:30 prior to the game. Coverage begins at 5:30 on TNT. And then
who do you just want to see in the skills comp?
Can I don't care be my answer? No, I really do. I actually give you a true answer. I do want to see Nikola Jokic, and I want to see any other person that has a similar skill set that could really give him a run for his money.
I think he's done it before. I think it would be fun to take the NBA's leaders in turnovers and put them in the skills comp.
That would be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome. I totally
throwing Trae Young, LaMelo Ball out there and just let him
it's funny because LaMelo's like low in turnovers. What do you mean?
Low for a 19-year-old.
Yeah,
not
true.
across the NBA.
Yeah, true.
So the second topic that Trevor and I are covering today, we're going to talk about everything happening with the terrible Timberwolves. Great pun, Trev. So it's not a pun. I don't know what I'm saying. So the Minnesota Timberwolves had a really weird weekend. I remember the news scene was blowing up with them early in the weekend because Anthony Edwards had his welcome to the league moment of just dunking all over Toronto's Yuta Watanabe. And it was probably the best dunk I've seen this year. And then we had the weird part of the Timberwolves week where then turn around to last night, and after a 4-point loss to the New York Knicks, the Timberwolves turned around and fired coach Ryan Saunders. What feels like early in a season, but I guess we are almost at this halfway point. And then today, they have hired now former Toronto Raptors assistant coach Chris Finch to be their new head coach, and not interim coach, but it's their new head coach. So the Timberwolves, in the span of 24 hours, have fired and rehired a new head coach in the middle of an NBA season, and I don't think I've ever seen that happen before.
If we have, it was before our time. We don't remember it. A couple things. First of all, I'm not taking credit for the terrible Timberwolves thing. You came up with that before we started recording. Give yourself more credit than that. Secondly, and we can debate this if you'd like, or we can brush over it and let the listeners react to it. Anthony Edwards' welcome to the league moment was not this dunk. It was getting drafted over LaMelo Ball and James Wiseman. Take that as you must. Otherwise, the hiring and firing of a coach like that. By the way, he was hired, or Saunders was fired or let go. By the way, they had already technically announced it. Shams and Woj did. It was technically like an hour after the game they announced the Finch ordeal, right, with the rehiring him. So technically, it didn't even take a day. It took like an hour, right, which is I wrote down a totally unprecedented. What I really like, though, and we can, after we talk about the coach, we can talk about the roster and a couple things that I had noted that were really interesting. The thing about the stuff with Finch is that, and I'm excited to say this because I think it's going to work out well for them, at least for Finch. I think it's going to be a good step for his beginning of his career here as a head coach, because I think the same thing happened with Nate Bjorken. This is the second person this year to be branched from the Nick Nurse coaching tree. You and a lot of our friends know I'm a big proponent of the coaching tree analogy. I really love it, stemming back to Bill Parcells and how the Bill Belichick thing happened. Nick Nurse, he's not the first NBA coaching tree. We've got the Pop coaching tree. We've got the Phil Jackson coaching tree. We've got the Jerry Sloan coaching tree. We've got a lot of good ones, right? But this Nick Nurse one is so fast and so early that I think he's going to have a lot of assistants really do well. Finch, a couple of things, just quick notes here. He was a really, really good. He started to look really, really good again in the G League, but he also spent some time with Nick Nurse on the assistant coaching team. And just overall, he's been able to make his presence known enough to, one, get hired in less than 24 hours by a team that's arguably the worst team we've seen in 20 years. But also,
it's obvious that he was hired prior to this firing.
Well, that was my next point. Was he actually has interviewed last offseason multiple times for multiple teams. So he's been in the works for that. That's awesome to see. Like I said, it's sad to see the final end to the Saunders family in Minnesota, more than likely, after obviously famous head coach Flip Saunders, rest in peace, and now his son getting let go with the team. Just neither of them really amounted to super big results. We can start discussing the roster now. A couple of things that I noted when I was doing some research. I first want to say this Edwards dunk was that of vintage D Wade, that kind of like pull back, athletic down the sideline or down the baseline, right? Which, by the way, he's often ever so compared to. He's compared to D Wade all the time. And
he's also said that D Wade is who he modeled his game after. So D Wade's is
makes me player. That's old.
That's the inspiration for him as a basketball player.
Crazy to think that I was watching basketball as D Wade was, the year or two after he got drafted. And now there's a guy who's, born in 2001 or 2000, and D Wade was his idol. I'm just, man, I feel old when I hear that. But this is unfortunately the most exciting thing to happen to this Timberwolves team, other than in getting 1 year of Jimmy Butler in 2018 before he realized that the dumpster fire that was going on in that organization, which, by the way, ended a 14-year playoff drought.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say it was the most exciting thing in the organization since, drafting Anthony Edwards. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it makes sense, the firing that happened that came there in Minnesota. They have the worst record in the NBA right now. After making the number one pick and after a not off season, but like late mid-season pickup where they brought in D'Angelo Russell, a former All-Star, to play alongside Karl Anthony Towns. And then you get the number one pick and take a guy that people are comparing to Dwayne Wade and an Anthony Edwards.
He's a lazy Dwayne Wade.
Still only won 7 games.
They've lost 24 of 31, to be clear. 24 of 31 to start the season. Like that number to me, it was alarming because Woj tweeted
Minnesota wanted to do more. They wanted to do more this season, and they are getting less, to be honest.
I'll tell you what they need more of. You're talking about more. I'll tell you what they need more of. Veteran presence. They have the youngest. This was the roster stat that I wanted to bring up. They had the youngest average age of a NBA roster this year at 23.3 years old. I'm going to read you a couple of names that you missed that I think are really important for them long term, but eventually aren't going to have the money for. D'Angelo Russell, like you already mentioned. I'm not sure what his situation looks like cap wise. I haven't played around with the NBA trade machine numbers and looked at cap recently with them, but they've got Cat on that extension that's already kicked in. You got Russell, Josh Okogie, Malik Beasley, who hopefully can get situated with all that legal matter. Anthony Edwards, Jarrett Culver, again, like you said, number one draft pick, and then the year before had a top 10 draft pick and get Culver. And then player I like, Naz Reid. I like him a lot. I think he reminds me of Vernon Carey a little bit in Charlotte. That guy who just could get an opportunity, and we're obviously short on big men in the NBA right now, and I think he could be that next wave of guys that could surprise people. Ricky Rubio is the only impactful veteran on that roster, and that is one of the many problems that we've already kind of started to discuss here. I don't even know not where to start, but like the one thing for them that I think is just truly, I just think they never. I'll tell you, in my opinion, as an NBA fan, I'll just summarize this. I think what really started their downhill is, believe it or not, is not passing on Steph Curry twice and drafting 2 point guards in front of him. But I really think it's not capitalizing on KG.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think that's where it began and ended for the Minnesota Timberwolves in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Period. I don't think it I think it stems from there, right? I think it's just at that point just a domino that keeps falling. Mm-hmm. Tell me one positive thing in the last 20 years. Okay, I'll give you this, not 20 years. Since 2008, what's the most positive thing to happen to the Timberwolves?
Kevin Love.
How did that turn out?
I mean, other than some all-star appearances and name presence, but you asked for the most positive thing. They made the playoffs that one with Jimmy Butler.
It didn't turn out positive, and that was kind of where I was going with that rabbit hole. This team is, I mentioned Detroit all the time preseason, and we were joking about like some dumpster fire teams, but like, how did I forget Minnesota, man? I think they just need to re-gut everything and get some new ownership in there. I don't know if they need to expand and go somewhere else, but they need to do something fast because this young roster is only getting older by the day, by the month, by the week.
Well, I mean, I think it's the structure of a roster you want for a team that's going to be good 5 or 6 years from now. But it definitely seems like their intention, based on firing their coach because they're not winning games, was that they wanted to be good now. You don't put together a roster of mostly 23-year-olds to win now.
Debate here or question. Yes, 23-year-olds like that, the average age is like such a good target, but like this team is 5 years away from being 5 years away because of honestly things that are beyond the players doing. I know Karl Anthony Towns is a guy that just got re-signed. He's been in the league quite some time now. He got his best friend to play with him, and he's real happy per se, right? But we've mentioned this before on this podcast. Winning is what makes guys happy ultimately deep down. I always feel like every time we discuss a team that's doing horrible and looking into the future is like, is he the next guy to go, right? But how many teams could utilize him so much better in a couple of years with all these assets and I'll bring up why I mentioned this. in a couple of years, the draft picks are going to be a lot more influential because of the high school edition, because of the high school change.
The double
and
draft.
Because of the double, exactly. He's a couple of seasons away, getting close to that time where if he's just not happy, his contract's not horrible because the NBA cap is going to always be in that number where he's at, and he's going to be a guy that teams are going to. It's going to be an Anthony Davis situation all over again. I really do feel like that
with Cat.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah. I don't see an end in sight that's good in this. And I don't want to be so somber here, but are Timberwolves fans looking at all this? Are Timberwolves fans truly the most miserable NBA fans right this moment?
Probably not the most vocal, but yeah, probably.
Yeah, they're not vocal. There's like 40 of them, but are they the most miserable 40 fans out of them all? I think so. I think my second funny point would be, are they the most miserable in all North American sports?
No.
Okay, and who is that? I'm curious.
I can just guarantee there's. Oh man,
I'll give you it. New York Jets.
Yeah,
that's this decade. Here's why I say
if you want to branch to baseball, you can throw Seattle Mariners in there.
Yeah, Seattle's been pretty good, but they're going up, right? I know we're not even talking about the NBA anymore, but I bring that up not to go on a rant. I bring that up to say that they have made in 20 years. Sorry, let's just say 14 to be safe because of the playoff drought, right? In basically 20 years, they've made the first round of the playoffs twice. I can tell you that those other teams have, at least the Jets have made the AFC Championship in that time frame. The Timberwolves, obviously, yes, are an expansion team, but they are far enough down the road now that it is sad and somber in Minnesota.
Well, if you want to, the thing that will probably hurt the Timberwolves fans the most, prior to Karl Anthony Towns, the Timberwolves have had two dominant big men. Kevin Garnett traded to the Boston Celtics and won a championship. Kevin Love traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers and won a championship. So if you're Karl Anthony Towns, I mean, hey, a couple years from now, you'll be traded somewhere in the Eastern Conference and you'll go win a championship.
If studying NBA history over the last 22 years of my life has taught me anything, that NBA history repeats itself very, very viciously, and regardless of league expansion. And yeah, I never made that connection doing this research, and I wish I had. That's awesome. And we're going to do this podcast in a few years when he gets traded. Maybe not even a few years, might be this offseason. And we're like, all right, well, go ahead and throw your bets in on whoever he gets traded to because they're winning a championship. History tells me that. Anything else on the Timberwolves or anything else on the somber situation in Minnesota or however?
No, nothing more than, I mean, I'd like to see Minnesota do better. I love small market teams. Hope for the best.
Is there, I would say a draft pick is like this like thing that's going to change them. New head coach, new GM situation not too long ago, getting rid of Tom Thibodeau. Is there a next step or is there a guy? Is there a trade, a situation, or something that you think could be the next piece that puts them not over the top, but like at least gets them onto stable footing?
Like I said, I like generally the makeup of the Timberwolves team if you can keep them together, and I think it's possible money-wise to do that because I think Anthony Edwards is going to end up being a good player. And they're going to get another high draft pick if they make a good selection, hopefully go for someone who's going to be a long-term ball handler for the team. And they're going to have a structure of a team that, like I said, in a few years, and when I say 5 years, it's like 5 years to contend. In 2 or 3 years, if you develop these players, keep them together, develop a team chemistry, which we know is hard to do. It's much easier said than done. You've got a team that I think could be good. These are young, very talented players. Karl Anthony Towns is remarkably talented. D'Angelo Russell, I think, is remarkably underrated. Anthony Edwards has all of the potential in the world. They've got a lot of role players who are pretty good and a high draft pick on the way. If they stay the course and not panic, I think things could work out, but things change so fast in the NBA. So,
all right. Well, almost over here. I wanted to throw out one final thing to Josh that might be a sneak preview coming up here soon. In doing some research for this pod, I came along a fun fact or statistic or trivial type situation that I wanted to run through, Josh, because we both We do this as much as we can throughout the week to make this show as best as possible for the listeners. But there might be things we might miss about the NBA, right? As we start doing this more and more, and as, by the way, I'm just going to say this right now instead of at the end. As of recording this moment, we have hit 300 downloads, and we are ever so thankful for that. Woo! I thought Josh was going to say woo there. The question I had for you is going to be, without Googling, because I can see you, who is the league leader in rebounds per game right now in the top 5? Dang it, man. You are on top of it. I really did not think you'd get that right. Well, this segment sucks. I'm cutting this out. I'm really not, but
no, keep it.
I am. Oh man. Okay. Well,
I thought it would be harder than that.
That's all I had, folks.
Oh, well.
Next week I'll come prepared for
Josh
a segment.
Will come with a trivia question. That's going to be harder.
Yeah. That's right. You got the segment next week, and it's going to have to stump me, even though you're probably going to stump me anyway. I can't believe you got that. Do you know who's second?
Is it still Drummond?
Nope, Drummond's third.
Okay, wait. Give me a second. Who has moved into second?
Now you're like, wait a minute. I don't even know.
I used to know who. No, it escapes me now.
It is Rudy Gobert.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Technically, you were right. Him and Drummond are tied.
There it is.
Shame on me for missing that. Do you just while we're on this, since I already messed up the first part of since I messed up the fact, can you round out 4 and 5?
Giannis is in the top 5.
Giannis is 5. Got it. Who's 4? This one I wouldn't have gotten 100%, and I love this team. I'll give you a hint. He's got
top 5.
He's not. That's one of your hints. The second hint I'd give you is his point guard is really good. I would say his point guard's a top 5 point guard right now.
Okay, give me a second.
This is probably insert Jeopardy theme music, but I think we'll get copyright
top 5 point guards and like crossing the ones that.
Okay, top 5 might be debatable. He's a really good point guard, and he's made this guy what he is this year. Western Conference.
Okay, so the point guard has made this big man the guy.
Player even better. Yeah. Western Conference. Trevor had them really high in the preseason.
Oh, DeAndre Ayton. What am I doing?
Mr. DeAndre Ayton. I wanted to see if you got that. It took all those hits. And no, he's been really good.
I mean, you were trying to get me to name the 4th leading rebounder in the NBA. What are you?
Hey, I was trying to make this fact segment at least a little more exciting. That's it. That's all I got. We can round it out. Anything else?
No, that's all I got. I'm glad I won Trivia's the first installment.
Absolutely. Hey, it'll be a full-time thing.
I'll start a tally board and see which one of us wins more often.
Right now, it's 1-0 you. I'm excited to see how poorly I do next week. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh. And we'll
see you later. Woo!